All right. Welcome, everyone, to the State of Trees, February 2026, presenting and archiving your forest and land cover observations. And what you see also on this shareable is something that says ForestSat 2026. And I will leave it at that. And Peter will be talking about that. That's a little teaser that Peter will be talking about later during the webinar. And I don't want to steal any of his thunder, but he will be featuring that because Peter is highly invested in ForestSat 2026. He has been doing multiple presentations for that. He's doing multiple presentations leading up to that and at ForestSat 2026, and he has participated in many ForestSats throughout the years. So he's going to talk about that and how it ties into the campaign and how it ties in to all the observations that you all have been doing with your students throughout the years, and what NASA is doing, what Peter has been doing in his research and with his colleagues as well. So I will leave it to that, and once at some point during the webinar, I will pass it over to Peter to talk about that and research and presentations that he has been doing in regards to ForestSat. But first, I want to do some introductions, some discussion about what we're going to be doing today. And then I will do some metrics and then pass it over and introduce and pass it over to our featured speakers today. First, as you know, I like to start off with a couple, kind of inspirational quotes here. And I found these two great ones here about, some research, since we're going to be talking about, with a student research project today. The first one is from Charles Kettering. And, we used a quote from Charles Kettering, not this one, but one, before, I believe it was either earlier this year 8 of the campaign, or I think it might have been part of year 7 of the campaign. But he was an American inventor, engineer, and businessman, and he's a holder of an amazing 186 patents. And his quote here was, "Research means that you don't know but are willing to find out." Seems pretty simple, but to me, it's pretty amazing, pretty resounding of what that says. There's a lot, said in just that simple quote, right? And the other one was from Raewyn Connell, who is an Australian sociologist and professor emerita, okay, from the University of Sydney. "Research is something that everyone can do and everyone ought to do. It is simply collecting information and thinking systematically about it." Okay, that's another quote that seems pretty simple, but it's so poignant. It just says that we need research. It's something everyone should do. It doesn't have to be just scientific research. There's so much research in so many different fields, right? But research helps us tie everything together. It helps us make sense of the world, helps us make sense of everything around us, right? And that's what the students did for this research presentation that we're going to hear from today from Croatia. All right, so today, that was introduction, and then I'm going to let Peter then, introduce this video that we're going to show. It was a Globe land cover thank you video from 2018 when we were talking about, with the release of the Globe Observer land cover tool and why it's important to study land cover and take observations. And then I'm going to, review quickly something that we created, that Peter and I created, several years ago for the campaign, that people have been using, in the research as well, the land cover data maps that we created for all 127 Globe countries. And then I will introduce the featured presentation from the students of their monitoring environmental changes through satellite imagery research projects for the 2026 Globe VSS program for this year, even though it was a very abbreviated meaning that usually the IVSS/VSS projects are due in around March, I believe. These were due at the end of January, so we got a lot. I believe they said there were around 350 projects submitted. Okay, and I saw this one. This one they submitted early, before the final date. I saw this. I was like, wow, this kind of brings in, all the things that we've been talking about in the campaign for the last several years, looking at satellite imagery, looking at the Globe database of other students' data, looking at, comparing the ground-based data and the satellite data, looking at the data they've collected, looking at data over time, okay? And we have the list of the students here with us, Marin, Ava, and Bruno, and then the educators, Rinka Claren, and then we have some information here with the protocols used, land cover classification, biometry, including tree height, and Earth as a system. And then I will pass it over to Peder Nelson for a discussion on archiving data, and then setting up for ForestSat 2026. And then we will have some final discussions and some Q&A with Peder, final discussion, and then we will adjourn for the day. All right. Here's our map of where the campaign member countries are. These are active major participants for the campaign. Right now, you'll see in green. And then we have the campaign metrics, which I like to show each time. I update these on the morning of each webinar day, and direct your attention to year 8 here on the bottom. We have just over 8,000 tree height measurements from over 2,300 global sites, over 3,800 land cover measurements from over 1,800 global sites, and 3,400 green up, green down measurements from just over 230 global sites. And right now, for just year 8, we are over 15,000 measurements from over 4,000 global sites. And this for the life of the campaign, which began on the 15th of September 2018, in paralleling the launch of the IceSat-2, or Ice Cloud and Land Elevation Satellite 2 satellite launch into space. We have a total of 264,333 observations from 80,286 global sites. And as I mentioned, that is as of this morning. And you can see the individual numbers here for tree height, land cover, and the greenings, the green up and green down. So, and I always do this disclaimer that, not all of these measurements come directly from campaign members, but I include all these numbers because this is all the data from the major globe protocols that we focus on for the campaign. And this is data that is used by students, with their projects, whether it be, IVSS, VSS, school projects, or just, and data that researchers, inside and outside of NASA can use, because this is considered, almost 8 years of data. And you can see here we have had 90 regular webinars for the campaign. This is number 90. We've had 36 special webinars related to the campaign, giving us a total of 126 webinars. And as part of the campaign, we have 82 blogs with over 380,000 views. So, we've had some amazing numbers here. So we're super excited about that. All right, so I wanted to announce this as well. We have our next campaign webinar will be on Tuesday, the 17th of March, and that will be the State of Trees, March 2026. Trees, land cover, mangroves, carbon, featuring 2026 VSS student research projects from Colombia, Italy, and Uruguay. And we're super excited to see that. So the presentation today is going to set the standard for next month's campaign webinar, where we're going to have a presentation from 3 separate student groups from Colombia, Italy, and Uruguay. So we're excited for that and hope you come back and join us. All right. So, Peder, you want to take over before I play this video?
Nope. Play the video, Brian.
All right. And then you'll take over. All right. And talk a little about it. All right. Let me play this video for you. I'm going to play it quickly and make sure you can hear this first.
Hey, everybody.
Could you hear that?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure, because Zoom is strange sometimes. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's start that over, because we want to hear Peder say, hey, everybody, again. Here we go.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, I'm Lola.
Hi, I'm Atticus Stovall.
I'm Eric Brown the Tolson.
And I'm Peder Nelson, Science Lead for Land Cover.
And
We
Want to
thank
you
for participating in our Land Challenge.
Congratulations, everyone.
you did it.
We want to recognize and give a shout out to our top observers.
congratulations to
Yushen Lee from National Kinmen Senior High School in Taiwan.
Andrzej Makut of Cardinal Stefan Wieniawski Complex of Elementary Schools in Jadysze, Poland.
Arkadiusz Bilecki from Boleslaw Prusz Elementary School number 1 in Góra, Poland.
Larry Cebuano from New Zealand.
Krasimir Kuyunjic of the elementary school Antun Mihanovic.
Antonia Kujundžić from elementary school Ivana Filipovic in Osijek, Croatia.
Ana Gracia at elementary school Vania in Karlovac, Croatia. 4 citizen scientists from the United States.
NASA scientists like me are looking forward to using your data for our work.
To view your submissions and others, just go to the Globe website.
So thank you very much for your help. Muchas gracias. Merci beaucoup and obrigado. Looking forward to working with your data.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for showing that, Brian. And I wanted to highlight that because that was, you know, sort of our aspirational time back in 2018, wondering and hoping that we would end up with a lot of good ground information, ground data that these scientists could use. And you see a lot of familiar faces that we've highlighted in our Trees Around the Globe student research campaign during that time. And so, you know, one of the things that I think is really interesting and great is, you notice we had some great participation there from Croatia. And so I'm kind of wondering if we actually research that data that was contributed back in 2018, what has happened during that time? And that's, to me, one of these wonderful things that, yes, we have a campaign, but we also have this really long-running challenge of monitoring and tracking and figuring out how to understand the tree environment around us, which isn't static. You know, trees keep growing, as Brian and I have kept highlighting. Each year, they're actually different. And so, you know, it's not easy enough to just, or simple enough to just go out and measure once. We need to research those pieces of things. And so this ForestSat community is one that embraced us early on. And we're going to be going back here May 4th to the 8th to Gainesville, Florida, and reporting some of our results. I have an oral presentation, 15 minutes or so, to actually talk about all of the data that we've collected, how you have all contributed to this, what you have found in your own research, like we'll hear about in a little bit here. And as we've heard about over the last 90 webinars that we've talked about here. It's a really dense topic. And so you can see this is where you will be able to be part of this, this larger conversation that's happening. And so, you know, I want to invite you to join us. There is a hybrid or a virtual option to take part, and there's student rates to take advantage of as well with this. But one of the things that I want to encourage you to do as well, that I do whenever I attend something like this, is I look at what are the skills that are being presented. And so if you click on this link about the workshops, you'll actually see a wide variety of tools and information, and a lot of the same things that we've presented in this lab, but maybe at a different level, and maybe one that you can start bringing into other classes like math, right? I've been finding a lot of people are learning about this statistical software. And so here is an upcoming opportunity, or it was yesterday, but you can see that here's where you can sort of see the trajectory and what you might want to learn, or what other scientists are currently using. And especially, there's a lot of this that has to do with canopy metrics. And using the LiDAR way that we've presented here as a way of really understanding that characteristic. But keep going down and you'll see all kinds of really interesting ways that you can learn about forest metrics and how things are getting currently analyzed. I love, again, a lot of this is really based around laser measurements. So, so Brian, thank you for continuing to give us that particular lens on things. But you'll see down here that we actually have also contributed to this. And so the data that we actually have been talking about here, we've already gone through and done our own workshop and presented to about 10 people or so who came to our Thursday workshop. So if you're interested in what we presented, you can see a little bit of the details by clicking on that link and reach out to us if you would like to have a workshop like this for your class or for your community. This is what we do here. And as you can see, mislabeled, not a doctor, but I'm still here, able to present all of the work that we've been doing with the Globe Observer app and how you use this within our science. And you can see some of the integrations that we're starting to bring in here that we've highlighted. So this will be what we end up presenting in May for an in-person workshop. So, make sure that you are tracking and keeping track of how scientists are learning from each other, and importantly, how they continue to learn in their career. They're not done when they get their degree. They continue to go to events like this and have that conversation. So with that, I think what we'll find over the next 2 months here, and as we start reviewing the recent conversation, the posters that were presented for the Virtual Science Symposium workshops, I think you'll see a lot of similar conversations and contributions here. So I just want to say thank you for everybody over the last 8 years contributing to our data set, which allows us to be part of this conversation. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, one thing, Peter, that I like that you said that, with this and goes for a lot of things, attending a conference like this, or this, the research that the students are doing are not a one and done thing. It's a sustained, it's sustainable. It's
Right.
one thing that, they continue, should continue to do this, whether you make a career out of it or not. There's folks like, I'll give an example that, my brother has the Globe Observer on his phone. He submits, he does some land cover stuff. He does tree height. He does clouds. He's not a scientist at all. He runs a hotel. He's a hotel general manager in South Carolina. So he does this, for fun, but he sustained this for as long as a Globe Observer has been out. But he doesn't necessarily do research, but he does this because he understands the importance of every one of his observations. But he has never gotten into science. He's never done that. He's always been in what's called the hospitality industry. Okay, but he understands this, how important this is to continue and sustain what he's been doing. And that's just an example of someone who's not in the math or sciences or anything STEM related at all.
Exactly, and that to me is this working together aspect of this. And so we always get asked in when we talk to people, what did you find? What did you find? Or what's the use of this? Well, here is one of our main uses. And again, this our ability to represent this community at this conversation is one of these things that isn't possible without us having an infrastructure and working together. And one of the things that I hope, and so reach out to me, as we're leading up to this, but I'm hoping to get new data sets. I'm hoping to connect maybe your community and what your classroom is doing to the activities that are happening here, because I expect there's many people in our audience and who have been contributing who are going to be working with this data in the future, just like what we set the stage for 8 years ago. In 8 years, what information do you want to have? Or what information do you want to make sure other people have about the world around you? So, Brian, with that, what did our group from Croatia end up finding in their investigations?
All right, let me do a quick, let me go back to the slides and I'll do a quick introduction and then we'll pass it over to them to see what they were able to find out through their monitoring environmental changes through satellite imagery. Let me go ahead and share that right now and then we'll pass it over to them. Let me go ahead and share my screen again. Sorry if it takes a second. Sometimes I'm a little slow at that. Let me go ahead and do that. All right, so let's go and pass it over to the students from Zadar, Croatia, and their featured presentation from the 2026 Globe VSS, the Virtual Science Symposium, Monitoring Environmental Changes Through Satellite Imagery. So go ahead and take it away. And thank you so much for their mentor and geography teacher, Zrinka Claren, for being so gracious and accepting my invitation for this very quickly when I sent an email to her. So thank you so much for that. And I will stop sharing now and I will pass it over to Zrinka and the students. Go ahead and take it away.
Yes, thank you.
Share. Yep. Yep. Looks good.
Hello, we are students of Šime Budinića Elementary School Zadar. I'm Marin Bažlarić, this is Eva Desnica, and this is Bruno Šegvić. Our mentor is Zrinka Claren, geography teacher. And today we will present to you our project called Monitoring Environmental Changes Through Satellite Imagery. The city of Zadar is an essential part of the Croatian Adriatic coast. It is the 5th largest city in the Republic of Croatia and the 3rd in coastal Croatia, making it one of the most important urban centers in the Adriatic region. The city of Zadar is in the cultural, economic, and development center of Zadar County. The mainland hinterland consists of a large flat area of Ravni Kotari, which allows it to expand freely and distinguishes it from most other coastal cities in Croatia. The specific features of the geographical position of the city of Zadar are reflected in the maritime openness, proximity to the fertile source of Ravni Kotari, large gravitational area of islands, coastline, and hinterland, the shortest maritime connection with neighboring Italy, good transport connections, and large water supplies. Zadar area belongs to the geological young dynamic system, which extends in a northwest-southeast direction. The Mediterranean climate prevails in this area with dry and hot summers and mild winters. The soils in the Zadar area are red soil on limestone and dolomite and brown soil on limestone. However, a large part of the soil has been anthropogenically modified by human activity. Vegetation in this area is forest, halm oak, downy oak, black ash, white hornbeam, Aleppo pine, black pine, and stone pine. Zadar has a rich heritage and today is one of the most popular Croatian destinations, mentioned in the Times magazine as a major tourist center in the Mediterranean. Zadar was once the largest fortified city in the Republic of Venice, and the city walls were an important part of the defense system. Zadar city walls have been included in the UNESCO World Heritage List since 2017.
The aim of our research is to compare the cover on 2 locations. Location Station 1, Pudarica, and Location 2, Musabsan Forest Park. Both stations are located northeast of Zadar at a distance of 3 kilometers. The total area on which the research was conducted is 4 square kilometers. The map of Zadar from 1938 shows that the highest density of construction in Zadar is the area of peninsula and the coastal area. In the hinterland of Zadar, low construction density is observed, a large number of plots for agriculture, bare soil, garrick, maquia, and forests. Station 1, Pudarica. In 1968, the area of Pudarica was an area of private plots intended for agriculture. Agricultural products such as potatoes, cabbage, tomatoes, and Swiss chard were used to feed the inhabitants of Zadar and the inhabitants of the local islands. In the following decades, agriculture was slowly abandoned and the plots were overgrown. The process of Zadar's expansion and reducing the agricultural land during the 1970s can be considered as a typical urbanization trend that occurred throughout the world during that period. Station 2, Musabsan Forest Park. Musabsan Forest Park is one of the largest pine forests in the Mediterranean, covering 250 hectares. Pine tree, pine or domestic pine is a tree form from the pine family or the conifer trees. Now I'm going to read you a quick text from Zadarski List, which is our local newspaper. The forest in Musabsan, which is a state property, is now under the use and care of Hrvatske šume, which is a state enterprise responsible for forests and woodland management. It was planted by the Italian rulers from 1932 to 1936, and intended as a defensive shield against the Bora wind.
A comparison of the land cover of Station 1 Pudarica and Station 2 Musabsan Forest Park was conducted for the period from 2015 to 2024. The comparison of the land cover was conducted using the Google Earth Engine, a computer platform for processing satellite images. The satellite program allows the observation of environmental changes with access to a large database of satellite images from Landsat. In Figure 2, we see a satellite image in dynamic world. Station 1 Pudarica and Station 2 Musabsan Forest Park. On April 1st, 2015 and January 1st, 2024. The dark green color in the map shows trees, light green color grass, yellow color bushes and undergrowth, red color built-up areas, and orange color agricultural land. Station 1 Pudarica. Figure 2 shows the area of Station 1 Pudarica on April 1st, 2015. A predominance of green and light green colors is observed, which tells us about the presence of trees and grass. However, on January 1st, 2024, predominance of yellow is observed, which indicates changes in vegetation. The appearance of yellow indicates less lush vegetation and the appearance of shrubs or undergrowth. Station 2 Musabsan Forest Park. The Figure 2 shows the area of Station 2 Musabsan Forest Park on April 1st, 2015. The image shows regular green plots, which indicates the presence of trees and an organized forest area. On January 1st, 2024, regular green plots still prevail, which indicates the preservation of tree vegetation in the area. In satellite maps in color infrared spectrum, red represents the vegetation. This type of satellite imagery is used to study and analyze vegetation cover on Earth. The red color in color IR images reflects the radiation emitted by the vegetation. Figure 2 shows a projection of 30 color IR satellite images taken in the time range from 1984 to 2024. It was recorded in days during July or August with the cloud cover up to 5%. In the area of Station 1 Pudarica, a change in the intensity of the red color is observed from 1984 to 2024, which tells us about a change in vegetation. Gradual thinning of vegetation in this area is visible, which is a consequence of human activities. Agricultural areas from 1968 were abandoned over time and were overgrown with maquia and individual trees. In the last decade, in the area of Station 1 Pudarica, we witnessed active clearing of vegetation on private plots in order to build vacation houses and plant gardens. In the area of Station 2 Musabsan Forest Park, there are no major changes in the intensity of the dark red color from 1984 to 2024, which points to a healthy dense forest. We can confirm this by the condition of this area from 1968 and in the last decade, the area of Station 2 Musabsan Forest Park, the city has invested many financial resources from various projects to turn this area into a city park with various sports and recreational offers for the residents of Zadar.
Musasna Forest Park near Zadar is a rare example of preserved forest in Dalmatia, and such as undergoing a process of renovation to make it accessible and useful to the public with the adequate use of such a natural resource. Students of our school dealt with the issue of the importance of green spaces for the residents of Zadar. They designed and created a project called Urban City Garden, which is located partly in the area of Musasna Budarica. In the project, students became aware of the importance of preserving natural green spaces, but also ways to integrate human activities with the least damage to the environment. So now I'm going to play a video to show you.
A comment of a Zadar citizen on the changes in the appearance of the city of Zadar. Every time I look around, I see even less green spaces and more concrete. This is not the city where I grew up in and where I spent my days, but in the parks and by the sea. Our parks and green spaces are not just an adornment to the city, but are important for our health and the quality of life as well.
Conclusions. Given the growth of the city of Zadar and the changing spatial environment, it is important to maintain a balance between urban needs and environmental protection. It is important to ensure the preservation of existing green spaces, such as parks, forests, and agricultural areas, and to protect them from further urbanization pressure. Natural areas and ecosystems need to be protected in order to preserve biodiversity. It is crucial that changes are implemented in cooperation with local communities, environmental experts, urban planners, and city authorities, and that citizens participate in the decision-making process. Sustainable development of the city of Zadar requires an integrated approach that takes into account economic, social, and environmental aspects in order to ensure the quality of life of current and future generations.
Thank you. That's it.
All right, thank you so much. And I really love the story map approach. You know, we've been doing a lot of story maps for the campaign over the last 8 years. You know, and we also really like the idea that you brought in, Zlatko Lazarin in here, retired seaman here, that talking about what he's seen, over his lifetime in Zadar, and how he's seen it change, and that's looking at him as a witness to seeing this change of where he used to hang out, as he was growing up in this city. One question that I had was, how did you choose the two basically research sites? How did you decide on those two locations specifically?
We were planning on researching about green spaces in our city, because we ourselves can see the less and less green spaces, the massive building and stuff. And so we thought it was a good idea on choosing the large forests in our city, and one of the largest in Mediterranean. And we thought, why not take advantage of it, because it is a thing to be proud of.
Yeah. So even you're as young students, you're seeing with your own eyes, you're seeing major changes in that, you're seeing, those major changes. And that's, it's good. One is it's good that you're recognizing these changes, not necessarily them being good changes, when you're seeing, lots, when you see reforestation and lots of trees and vegetation being preserved, that's a good thing. But when you're seeing these things where, the great green spaces in forests are, as Zlatko mentioned, you're seeing them turning into, more concrete, that's not necessarily a good thing, right? So, we love that, in your story map is that you put this in context with, how you show, the before and after, especially with the, I really like the slider that you have in your presentation. It was from the dynamic world with the station 1 and station 2 on there. So I thought that was interesting. I looked at that for a while, just moving it back and forth and looking at all the little locations here, especially the built up areas, versus the shrub and scrub and the trees and grass. So I really went back and forth and just thought that was, pretty amazing just to see those changes in that amount of time. So, great job on, the story map. The story maps, I think, are, so powerful. They're, it's not your standard PowerPoint. It's not, but I think there's such a powerful tool in, developing a story such as what you did. And, you're looking at the satellite data, you're looking at, the globe data, you're looking at the local data and the imagery that you get from your location and the history of it as well. And then you talk to someone who's been there their entire lives and they've seen the change, over time with their own eyes. They've been a witness to that change. So, that's why I wanted to include you in, this, have you here presenting this, because it's, you presented things that we've been talking about in the campaign for the last 8 years.
Yes.
And does anybody else? Oh, I do see a question here. Peter has a question in the chat. The question is, what do you think will happen to the land cover of the study areas over the next 5 years?
Well, we think that the city will grow. There will definitely be concrete, but we do hope the Musabsan Forest Park will still be healthy. The vegetation will be healthy, and we hope to still take care of it. And we really do thank the Hrvatske šume, because it really does help with the green spaces.
Excellent. Any follow-up on that, Peter? You want to
No, that's perfect. Thank you for that answer.
Excellent. One thing I also thought was interesting too, and then I'll pass it over to anyone else who wants to ask a question. In the beginning of the story map, I noticed some of the vegetation when you talked about forests, some of the trees that you mentioned, where I live in Maryland in the United States, we don't see some of these trees that are, that you see in your location, like the downy oak, the white hornbeam, Aleppo pine. We really don't see these. We see like loblolly pines. We see ones like that. We see like American sycamore trees, than some of the ones that you see. So that's very interesting. I always like to see, where the species are, particularly located. Do you know, with these forests, are these, with these trees that you mentioned here, the holm oak, downy oak, black ash, white hornbeam, Aleppo pine, black pine, and stone pine, do you know, are these native to these areas in Zadar?
Yes.
Most of them are native.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I there's so many trees. I think there's about what is the last thing? About 78,000 tree species across the planet right now, and about 3 trillion trees. So it's hard to know where, there are experts out there, but I'm pretty good with trees, but I don't know where all 78,000 trees are native to everywhere. So, but yeah, it's interesting to know that. So, thank you for that. Luis has a question in the chat. Is there significant urban development pressure in your urban area for new constructions that could affect your forested area?
Well, there is.
Yes.
There is definitely. Because of the tourism, basically, that's the biggest. They have to build like hotels and stuff for the tourists because that's one of the biggest interests in the place that we live in.
So Zadar is one of the larger tourist areas in Croatia?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, interesting. All right. All right, anybody else have any other questions they'd like to ask? You can either put that in the chat or you can feel free to unmute. Luis also said it's the same in his country. And Luis, do you want to mention where your country is?
I'm from Portugal, north of Portugal, small city, 70 kilometers north of Oporto.
Also Mediterranean.
Cali de Viana do Castelo.
Dobra, ale mediteranska zemlja. Okay. It's also part of Mediterranean.
Yep. Also part of the Mediterranean. Yep, it's in Portugal. So, yep. Anybody else want to ask a question? Feel free. You can unmute if you like, or put it in the chat. We'll wait a minute or two for that. While we're waiting, anything else the students would like to add, or Zrinka, anything you'd like to add to it?
No, we said everything we wanted to.
And we wanted to thank you for being here.
Thank you for presenting. Sabrina from Italy asks, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. She said, very interesting. Good job. Which tool did you use to create the video?
Can you repeat?
Sabrina asked, which tool did you use to create the video you shared?
So the video is from the generations before, so we just added to the presentation the video.
Minecraft.
Our students built it in a game called Minecraft.
Okay, so it's through like Minecraft.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I was thinking it was that because my son used to play Minecraft a lot when he was younger, and it gave that Minecraft look and feel to it. Yeah, very cool.
Well,
okay.
I want to encourage you all to stick around for the next little bit if you can, or at least check back with our video here, because I want to talk a little bit about you guys did a great job with this project, and we wanted to make sure that somebody can go back and research what you've done, right? So I love, this story map as a great way of sharing information. But one of the things about research, right, is actually that, or science, is that idea of archiving your data or starting to think about what somebody might see in next year if they go back. How can they use that data of yours? And so that's one of these pieces that we haven't emphasized a lot in our science, maybe as much as we need to. But it's great that your data is available in the Globe database, and so so I was really inspired by what you were talking about and what you were showing there. And so I want to start building off of this, because it actually makes me want to research this area. And so I'm going to need some help with you all at some point to sort of to localize and give me some information about what we're seeing. And this again is where in a couple years you may not be here to be able to answer this question. But one of the tools that we've highlighted in here is EarthMap. And EarthMap is a really wonderful tool that allows you to see a lot of different places on Earth and a lot of different data sets. So I came in and selected the country of Croatia, and then it zoomed me in and I found Zadar, nice and easy. And I went down, and one of the things you made me really wonder about is the tree height for this location, because you mentioned it was really unique and that it was really obvious. And that map that you showed really was it showed that, right? And so I came in here and just turned this layer on. And what I found is exactly this area that you were highlighting, or one of your areas, really easily. It pops out on the map really, really well. And so I'm going to zoom in, because one of the things that I noticed that tells me something about, how these trees came to be. Whenever I see straight lines like this on a map, I always start wondering, when were those trees planted there, or how were they planted? Have people gone in and thinned them out so that they can get bigger? Or, like what we always wonder here is, how tall are those trees? And so here we actually have a prediction, or a layer that's giving us this. And it's really, really interesting, because we see the same pattern that you were showing to us, but we have a little bit more detail. And in fact, I can kind of see this might be where the tallest trees are, over in this sort of southwest area, right? And so this to me is a great follow-up data set that you can start using and start thinking about how tall are these trees going to be in 5 years. And importantly, are they going to stay in this pattern, or are we going to actually start linking canopy together and going from that open canopy, tree canopy, to one that is more contiguous, like we see starting to happen down on some of these pathways that make it hard to actually see what's happening underneath there, like the playgrounds and some things like that you were showing us. So I'm really excited about what you showed us, because I can even just go in here and start seeing the satellite imagery, and the edges and some of these things that you were showing us become really obvious and really detailed, right? We can start zooming in and really start to see this intersection. And we can also start to see, oh, look, it managed to see the difference between the shadow of these trees and the top of those trees. So this is really interesting to me, because I can zoom in and I can start to see the shape of these trees. And I'm hoping that, what you guys were presenting helps me to know what type of trees these are. Like Brian was asking for, are these broadleaf trees, or are they needle leaf trees? This one's really hard to see, what type of leaf there is, but that shape is something that we can use. And so, this to me is a data set that, unfortunately, was only created for the year 2020. And so what you guys have measured and what you've already done is going to be slightly different than what these map producers are predicting in this area. But it's a really great piece to sort of start bringing into what you introduced. And what's nice is that you can actually go over and you can click on a spot, and let's see how tall these red trees were. And I have to pick my layer over here. But this is a nice way that you can start pulling in some of this other information to your location here. So you see, we've got a lot of layers that are available, but I'm going to go down and select this meta global canopy height. The nice thing is that's available for me, it's available for you. And if I process this, hey, we're going to get some information. And again, this is something that you might want to add to your table or add in some of the satellite data that you presented in your presentation here. And all of that makes it a lot easier for, again, somebody to research what you've done. So while that's running in the background, I'm going to pause and ask, the students who presented, do you have any questions about or anything to add about what you've shown us and what I was able to quickly research with what you were doing?
I don't have any questions.
Good. That's what I like to hear. So, it takes a little while to process and get that information. And while that's happening, I want to talk about one of the things that, not that. Let me find the right tab that I was talking about. So I wanted to actually make sure that you are all aware of this protocol that Globe has that walks you through how to do this comparison between your data and what you labeled in that location versus what you were showing us. So this is a nice tutorial that walks you through and will help you to put numbers behind that map that you were showing us. And that, again, is really useful to help us start thinking about that forecast for the future. So I wanted to make sure that you're aware of this particular tutorial that gives you those next steps that you can use to follow up or make as a suggestion for other people to do the next thing to follow up. Okay. And that's really important because that's how we make or how we do our science. And that's really, one of those things that, because you put your data into the Globe database, it does become reusable. But one of the things that I want to share with everybody is that just recently, in the last 2 or 3 weeks here, you now have all of the Globe data in a downloadable fashion. So you don't have to go to the database to start working with all of the data that is out there. And so when you follow that, you can actually see all of the different protocols and all of the different data that has been collected over time. And so this is to make your life a little easier. So I want to encourage you to go and explore these new downloadable data sets. This is one way that Globe is making data discoverable and reusable like this. But you'll see, there's an end date here, right? So if you've been doing work after this, you may not find it in these archive data sets. But this, again, is a really important part of your science. And so what is, and where we are also archiving, and you should think about putting your data so somebody can find it again, is over here on a location called Zenodo. And this is a place where I'm going to share this link in the chat for everyone, is a place where you can actually put your data set that you created for your study project and that you put in for your presentation. And you'll see that this is where scientists put their data. And you can actually see that we have some example data sets from certain time frames. Brian isn't the only one that put together this Globe Observer data here, but for some reason he's the one that's getting the credit for it. So so this is a really good place where you can go and discover other data sets. And again, that's research right here. And so go in, you can see all the people that help to describe this, but look at how this data gets described here. And this is something that you want to emulate and that you want to use as you put together and think about ending your project. Now that you've done this presentation, you've come to some conclusions, and this is a way that you can actually make your data reusable in this way. So I want to encourage you to do that with your particular data sets, especially the ones that you have described with a poster or with an article or something like that, that really helps us to understand the context of that data. Okay, so this is how you can see, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about what Brian used to describe in the journal article, that is a good reference to go through and learn a little bit about our campaign and the satellite data. So that you might find this information right here to be really useful, right? And this is how you can actually find the data that was used and that Brian is describing here. If for some reason you can't find it, that's part of the research. And so I encourage you to look at how this data was put together and how it's presented as you think about that final step of your science project, which is archiving it like this. And here, Brian has this article, but you can also have this poster or those other things that describe what we're looking at here. So that is what I wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of how the Globe community is archiving the data that we're stewarding, but also how you can take what you have created and actually put it together with your presentation and with all of your information that allows somebody to, again, go in and research what you have done. Because as you see here, all of this data becomes stuck at a moment in time, whether it be 2018 to 2019, or whether it be a more recent data set. There's always this time frame because it takes some time to analyze our data. So that's a really important part that I just want to encourage everybody to do as you are working through and thinking about what is the process of science that we're doing here. How does my Globe data or Globe Observer collected data end up being useful to the science community? So I'm going to stop right there and ask, does anybody have any questions about this kind of final step that is modern science, if you will? It is a way that we actually make our actions and our data useful to the larger community here. As Brian says, tree height is not just a measurement. It's a gateway to all of these other things that you can do with that. Well, wonderful. I'm really glad that we were able to give you some wonderful ideas to think about. And if you do have any questions about what you find in the Globe newsletter that went out today about these comma-separated files, this way of formatting the data, how do you work with it? How might you combine that together with the satellite data? reach out to Brian and I, and we'd be glad to highlight that for you individually, or make sure that some of our students that are coming forward are describing how they actually work with this historical data and the data of today. Because as Brian is showing here, we're not just doing this for now, but some of the trees that we encounter are witnesses to 200 years of environmental measurements and experiences. And the tools that we've been talking about are changing underneath us. And so I really want to highlight, we have ways of doing in-person workshops. We also have ways of doing meetup and do sciences like this, where we dig into all of these details that make your study area very unique. So, here we're able to contribute to the conversations that are happening with people that are working at a national level. In some cases, other times they're working at a very local level, and so reach out to us, and we want to match you up and make sure that you are connecting to the national foresters in your community or in your countries too, that are describing your locations. And this is the transformational moment that we get to experience for the next couple of years, which is building this collaboration between our globe database and our globe on the ground measurements that are stored in that structure, along with all of this other NASA environmental data and measurements that are out there. And so please keep checking back in. We're going to be doing this, like I said, to support these foresters, and they can get credit for their professional development by working with our data, your data, the data that you've contributed. So, if you know anybody who's in that professional community, encourage them to reach out and pay attention to this particular conference and what we are bringing together as a community. It's really, and like I said, an exciting time. And so thank you, Brian, for giving us the space and this ability to actually contribute to these conversations that are happening, whether they are funded by public science or private enterprise, or, wherever the funding is coming from. All of us are experiencing these changes of tree growth. And I encourage us to continue to work together. It's been a fun 8 years, and you'll start to see some of our summary statistics and how much some of these trees have grown. As we mentioned at the beginning of this thank you video, some of these schools have stayed, and some of these measurements have stayed engaged since the beginning of our campaign. And that's really a humbling thing to think about, all of the science that we've done together during that time frame. So come back next month, find out some more about the measurements and the trees around the globe that have been reported and shared with our community, and that really, set the stage for some of the activities that you might be doing this summer. Again, start thinking about that forecasting. How tall are those trees going to be if you go out and make these measurements again? Or are the trees even there? That might be the first question that you might need to answer is, are the trees still there? Did they make it through the winter? Or did they end up having some major storms like what Brian is experiencing and started us off, talking about? Winter can be a harsh time for the world and some of these creatures and living things out there. So that first question of who survived the winter might be where you start your research this summer. Brian, do you have anything to add to take us home for our Trees Around the Globe 90th webinar? I will say, since Brian might be having some storm-related issues,
Sorry,
when you're, yeah.
I just popped in. Yeah, sorry, my mute was not unmuting for some reason. I'm not sure why, but that was Zoom. So yeah, sorry about that. So the presentation today from the students, was excellent, and it was a great way to bring us into next month's webinar, where we will have students from 3 locations presenting. One is going to be from Italy, and Sabrina is with us today, where she and her students will be presenting, at next month's webinar. And also from Colombia in South America, and also in South America, Uruguay. So, we're super excited to have those presentations as well. And those are a combination of everything that Peter has talked about today, looking at those changes. And you'll also be able to see on the webinar page, we have a description of that as well. And then I'll be sending out a reminder reminder email soon about that. I didn't want to send that out before this one happened, but I'll be sending that out this week to get that on your calendar. But, we'll be having some great presentations like that as well. For those of you who weren't in earlier, we had a major snowstorm here on the East Coast of the United States, specifically where I am, what's called the Delmarva region. We saw lots of changes between Sunday and Monday, where we had where I live, we had about 15 inches of snow, which translates to about 0.33 around that meters of snow overnight, of very heavy, densely packed, high moisture snow. So it was very heavy. It sat on the the trees pretty dramatically. And you can see it in my background picture here, but I'm going to also share one, that I have here from my backyard. I shared that earlier before some folks came on, but I'm just going to, share this picture here with you just to see. This is about 5-6 hours worth of snow. It came down pretty quickly. So let me go ahead and share that. But you can see this is a picture from, our backyard. I'm working from home now because we've had some delays where I work at the NASA Wallace Flight Facility, which is south of us in Virginia, but they had a pretty decent amount of snow as well, and lots of ice. Right now the sun's bright. Where you see all these trees here, this was yesterday morning at about 7 a.m. and you can see the snow stuck to everything in this image. But right now, as I look outside, there is not a single bit of snow on any tree right now. The wind was very fierce yesterday throughout the day and this morning, so all the snow blew off and the sun's been bright. It's not very warm. It's still pretty cold outside right now, but because of the sun's pretty intense, and the wind blew everything off the trees. So there's a lot of melt going on right now. But you can see that's a pretty big amount of snowfall. Our home was without power for about 30 hours. We just had power restored to our house around 2:15 a.m. this morning. And our house was pretty chilly. It was about 45 degrees inside the house, before the power was restored, which that's Fahrenheit. That's about like 7 degrees Celsius. So, it's it was pretty cold in our house. So we actually spent the night at my wife's parents' house last night. Their power was restored, pretty quickly. Now, even though they got the same amount of snow we did, they were on a different power grid than we were. So, but you can see here once again in this picture, a lot of snow in a short amount of time. But yeah, a lot of this is melting, but absolutely none, and I'm going to say absolutely none on the trees right now. What you see here, everything is completely, not snow covered anymore. But I just wanted to share that because we see big snowfalls like this, but we also see these rapid changes like this as well. And Peter, I did do an observation, but I still have to upload it because when I did this, there was no internet at our house, and there was such limited connection for cell signal as well during this time because there was nothing. Everybody was trying to just use cell signal around the area. So it's still sitting on my phone right now. So I got to submit it. Didn't get to submit it yet. So I have to do that. So
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's got to go. I got to go on my phone and submit it. So, but it's still sitting there, ready to go. Just haven't.
Yeah, just I appreciate you sharing this, Brian, because this is one of these things that can change within a day with trees. And so I wanted to share those that are wanting some engineering design or sort of like, think about, how much snow, if you have it, how much snow load can a tree take before it shakes or before the snow actually falls off of it. I have a colleague who this is what he's doing. And so it's a very fun question, and looking at the amount of snow on each one of those branches, Brian, and quantifying that out is maybe something that maybe people hadn't really thought of too much, but is a great way that we have found to use photos like this and to be able to record a very dynamic thing that is in many cases responding to either temperature or sunlight. And so it's an indicator of your day getting warmer. And so, it's a very subtle thing, but it again, tells us a lot actually about this area. I'd also say, Brian, why is there, snow vertically on one part of the trunk, but not on the other part? Can you tell us why?
Yeah, so what you'll see here is this snow here, the way it was blowing, this snow that's on the side of the trees, this is all on the eastern side of the tree trunk with all the snow blowing in that direction. So you can see here the snow, because we were in blizzard-like conditions, all the snow was blowing, on towards that east side. So all that snow was stuck to that east side of the tree.
Yeah. That directionality, thank you, Brian. I mean, that's exactly what I wanted you to highlight there.
And high moisture content, because there was such high moisture, and the snow was almost like, because my wife, who is a photographer, also a math teacher, but a photographer, she was out there trying to get pictures of snowflakes, but she couldn't because the snow was so high in moisture. And the snowflakes were basically compacting together in huge clumps that it was virtually impossible to get individual snowflake photos, because they were falling with so much moisture and clumping together. You could not discern individual snowflakes. It was wild for those 5-6 hours. And that's what you see here. This is looking out I was standing on our front porch looking out. That's our yard in the front with all the trees. And you can see there's a bunch of trees on the far left side. You can see that small tree snapped because of the weight on there. You see that just behind that tree that doesn't have a ton on the trunk, right there. You can see that tree behind it that snapped, that I'll have to clear out later. You can see there's a bench right there that blew over from the storm. It's actually an aluminum bench with a pad on it that blew over from the storm. But you can see here there's a lot of things that have fallen and branches that blew over. So that the smaller trees, and we have some woods in the back that you saw there where we have some trees that broke due to this. And in our area, in our location, lots of big trees were uprooted. Just at the entrance of our neighborhood, we had a massive tree that was uprooted, and it fell across the roadway right into our stop sign and our street signs and totally destroyed that. And the county here had to push it off the road so people could get through. But throughout our neighborhood, our whole neighborhood was without power for 30 hours. But so many trees had to be taken off the roadway in our area because of
And Brian, I think those are all examples of the hidden parts of the carbon cycle that are actually really not getting recorded, which is where photos like this actually help us to know how much of those tree branches have come down and how long do they take to decompose and turn into soil, right? There's a really great experiment that you're showing us here, and especially all of the references that you highlighted. And that's where having a comparison image helps you to know, or you can use that reference of a bench to approximate how tall things are of the snow accumulation. And I love, the directionality is another good reason why we do our Globe Observer photos the way that we do them. And so thank you for sharing, those really important insights, because just if I was shown your photo, I would have a lot of those questions, and you were able to fill in those details in a way that, again, takes us back to what we wanted to sort of stress today, which is this, archiving your data, making it researchable, in this way, recording as many of those details as you're talking about, Brian, that helps to provide context to that measurement. And sunlight is a measurement. It was cloudy when it was there, 100%. So that right there is something I saw in there. And so, I just want to encourage everybody to, finish your data, your data life cycle. And when you do a project, make sure that you can share and archive this, because it's amazing how fast things change. And Brian, for me, as somebody who pays attention to snow and where it is in the world, seeing it out of the branches and out of the trees tells me something about how warm it is. And that right there, you're really seeing the effects of surface temperature going on.
Yeah, that's not looking at the same spot. It's off out of the side of the house. It's a different window, but you can see there's virtually no snow in the trees anymore.
Yeah. And what's interesting that I start noticing too is how things flip around, and the trunk actually becomes a place that heats up and starts melting the snow away. And so that might be one of the first places that actually starts to lose snow, rather than where it got accumulated first to begin with too. You can see there that obstruction that it gets. So there's so much that a simple picture like this just, as you can tell, excites a scientist like me, which is why we wanted to start off with this thank you video at the very beginning, because it wasn't just those scientists that we were able to harness and get on video there. But I hope that everybody here gets excited as they start to try to figure out and reconstruct what is happening in these places, and why do we have the arrangement? Why do things accumulate in the way that they do? And for me, snow is one of those great ones that we can use from space or on the ground here to just get some of those insights. So, so Brian, do we have a date figured out for our next webinar? When we're going to keep our conversation going?
Yes, the next webinar will be, I mentioned earlier, the 17th of March, and it will be on. And I will share this again real fast so everybody can take a look at it. It will be, here we go, right there. There we go. It will be the 17th of March. Tuesday.
Wonderful. And Brian, I hope that we get a little update with some of those globe observer photos, right? Because that I don't, let me ask you, because you can highlight this next time too. But have you been able to do a tree height observation in this snow?
In that snow, I have not done that yesterday because we were too busy going back and forth with power outages and all this stuff, going back and forth to different homes, everything. So
yeah,
I didn't in the snow yet, but no.
Okay, well, so we'll cycle back to that question.
Done tree height measurements with a lot of those trees that you saw there, but not during the snow. So they're in the database already, but just not yesterday.
Perfect.
Because we weren't home a lot yesterday because we were back and forth a lot of locations. So
I guess science takes a back seat sometimes, right? But thank you for that, Brian, because I like I said, I really appreciate this personal connection. And we'll check back in with you and see, some of these photos that you've submitted and see what ended up happening, and how quickly that snow does melt away.
Excellent. All right. Does anybody have any further questions or comments? Because we are at about time for the webinar today. And yes, Bushra, feel free to share the screenshots with your community. Perfect. Thank you, Zrinka and students, for the presentation today. Excellent job.
Yep.
And I will have the recording. I will send an email out with the recording when it's up on the webinar page. And thank you all so much.
Happy measuring.